I've always trusted glass more than memory. Glass has edges. Memory slips. The battery indicator on my camera jittered red as Leon's pickup hit another pothole and the whole cab rattled like a drawer of loose silverware. 15 years of pointing lenses at America's forgotten corners hadn't cured the way my pulse lifts before a story. This time the feeling came with weight. Leon's warning sat in my gut like burnt coffee. We had packed light enough to sprint. One camera body, 2 lenses, a roll of ND filters, cards, batteries I'd labeled with a Sharpie at 2 in the morning. Jonathan, 8 years at my side, straddled the sound kit like a seatbelt. He tested levels with that calm, surgeon's patience I'd come to rely on when everything else frayed. I'd learned to read his mood by how he cradled a recorder. Today, the grip was careful, skeptical. "You sure about this place?" he called, voice raised over the engine. Leon didn't answer at first. The man knew these ridges the way a carpenter knows the weight of his own hammer. A scar, white and ropey along his forearm, caught the afternoon light. Bear trap from before he learned to move like water around teeth. His hands were steady on the wheel, knuckles pale. "It isn't like other places," he said finally. "People there don't act right." Mountain vowels lengthened his words, the consonants softened by distance and weather and time. He had said versions of it on the climb, once like a warning, once like regret, a third time like prayer. I've heard warnings before. Remote communities that choose privacy and salt their stories for tourists. Folklore sold at a margin. My job has been separating color from truth, fear from the price of a second tank of gas. Still, I've watched Leon's profile on the switchbacks and filed the tremor in his jaw as data, not superstition. The road downgraded as we rose. Asphalt to gravel, gravel to dirt, dirt to a memory of tires, trees pressed in, cedar and hemlock combing the roof. My phone lost its last bar 20 minutes ago. Leon's knowledge was now the only map. In the intervals when branches parted, the valley showed itself in glimpses. A quilt of clearings, the pale scars of terracing, smoke so thin it looked like breath on glass, no utility poles, no satellite dishes glinting like coins. The world below had a handmade stillness. "How much farther?" I asked. "Over this ridge," Leon said. "You'll see." I didn't raise the camera. You don't open with a lens in someone's face, not if you want them to tell you why they built a life where maps go quiet. First, let the land speak. Let your own body register the pitch of the silence. We crested the rise and the valley unscrolled like someone had pulled a muted film taut between mountains. Buildings, wooden, plain, well-maintained, clustered without a planner's eye. Tin roofs, gardens in careful squares, 3 narrow lanes braided into a center that wasn't quite a square and wasn't quite a green. Smoke climbed in thin vertical lines as if conditioned not to wander. Leon took the descent slow, threading the truck through boulders that had outlived 3 generations of tires. When he cut the engine at the tree line, the silence struck like water after a long hallway of noise. No highway hiss, no transformer hum. Only wind-combing needles and a bird's call that seemed to travel longer than physics offered for a note that's small. The air here had altitude baked into it, cool and sap-sweet. I breathed it in like I was checking the room tone of the place. "Population?" I asked. "Hard to say," Leon said. 60, 70. Enough to keep rituals going. Few enough to know the faces you dream at night are also the ones you pass at morning. We stepped out into a silence that made every zipper and latch sound impolite. Jonathan moved with his usual economy, unspooling lav mics he wasn't going to place yet. I shouldered the camera but let it hang, a promise, not a threat. Leon hovered by the driver's door like a man who might leave the engine idling if the land asked him to. "They don't do leaders," he said when I asked who to greet first. "People just are." Cryptic can be a shield or a clue. I pocketed the sentence to be unpacked when meaning arrived. We crossed the thin shade and let the main path, packed earth footsteps smoothed, take us inward. If you've walked enough small towns, you learn to inventory without staring. Repairs fresher than the walls they patch, tools hung where hands still reach them, fences kept more from habit than necessity. This place was neither starving nor rich. It looked like work lived here. A woman stood in a doorway with a stool and a low spindle, hips squared the way bodies square to tasks they know down to the joints. Her hands turned with a spinner's certainty, fingertips coaxing twist and memory into fiber. Except there was no fiber. From 3 steps away, with the lens cap in my pocket and my eyes unmediated, I watched her fingers thread nothing to nothing, wrists remembering the weight of what was not there. She did not see us, or pretended not to. Her mouth held the contented line of someone almost done with a good day's work. Past her, a man raised an axe, the haft polished by years of winter urgency. The blade fell in a clean arc, shoulders and hips in agreement. It stopped a finger's width above the log, as if the wood itself had learned to resist contact. He reset, raised, fell again. The rhythm was right. The world refused the last half inch. Children ran in a loop, laughter big enough for a town twice this size. They tossed and caught air with the solemnity of rules that matter. Whatever ball they were playing with belonged to the place where their eyes were fixed, not the one we carried in with our boots. I felt that old documentary reflex, what is the rule here? Stir and look for purchase. Something in me wanted to name it. Ritual, rehearsal, folk practice. A neat label I could carry home. But the longer we walked, the more the motions accumulated like snowmelt behind a brittle dam. A woman shook out a dress I couldn't see and pinned it to an empty line. An elder swept a step that stayed clean no matter how long she worked. A boy hammered nails into a fence that didn't gain nails. I tried a soft interview approach, the tone I use when I want someone to know I understand the cost of answering. No one turned. Not rudeness, absence. They tracked us without looking. I could feel it in the infinitesimal pause when our shadows fell across their tasks. Awareness without acknowledgement. A choreography that had rehearsed our presence and learned to keep its face still. Jonathan drifted closer, lips parted the way they are when he hears something wrong in a room and can't name the frequency yet. I saw the question in his eyes. I didn't answer. Some questions in this line of work are better asked into a recorder in the dark after you've left the scene. Some questions are traps. Then we reached the porch with the swing. It hung from new rope. The seat was wide enough for a father's push. A girl sat in the center, maybe 8, pale blue dress printed with a scatter of flowers like forget-me-nots. Her feet didn't quite reach the plank floor. Her hands lay folded, small and formal, as if she had been told that was how to sit when being watched. The swing moved with a perfect economy of distance and return. No pump, no tuck, no kick. The arc repeated with a metronome's fidelity, a pendulum carved from patience. The ropes creaked on a rhythm that felt like a code. Always there, Leon murmured, coming up short a few paces behind us. Every time I've come through. Never sees me. Always moving. I lifted the camera a little, not to my eye. Old habit, I like to teach a lens the room before I ask it to understand a face. The LCD showed what my eyes did. A child, a swing, a slow, careful joy. She turned her head and looked straight at the glass anyway, as if she knew where the seeing lived. The smile she gave me wasn't surprised. It was the smile you give someone late to a conversation you began without them. My hands tightened on the body out of reflex. That old itch. Frame it, get a clean line, ride the shutter a half stop wide to drink more of this strange light. I didn't raise the camera, not yet. We kept moving. The town's pulse was steady, ours had quickened. I tried 2 more soft approaches. Questions like palms up, weightless. The answers were the same non-answer, the same refusal to register us with anything but a shift so small it barely disturbed the air. Work lived here. The world, it seemed, did not. I didn't say that out loud. I let the thought sit and hum in my chest. By the time the sun leaned away and the mountain shadows connected into a single sheet, I had what I tell producers on the phone is an opening, a land without wires, a people doing the motions of a life without the matter of it, a child who swings forever without moving her own body an inch. That is the promise of a first act. You show the seam, you do not pick at it. Back at the tree line, the truck looked smaller than it had when we left it. Leon's posture had a looseness to it that read as relief. Jonathan was watching me, the way he does when he suspects I've seen something he hasn't yet. On the walkout, I glanced once, and only once, at the porch. The swing kept time. The girl did not blink. The camera hung against my chest, warm from my hands, heavier than it had been this morning, like glass remembers what it's asked to hold. Tonight, I told myself, I'll review the day. If there is a seam, the footage will find it. If there's a price, I'll name it before it names me. And then the path bent, and the porch disappeared, and I realized I had already started to count the creak of a swing I could no longer hear. That night, the footage waited like something breathing inside the camera bag. We'd set camp just off the logging road, where a small clearing opened to a stream glinting in the starlight. Leon had insisted on this spot, close enough to leave quickly, far enough that the village lights were only a faint amber pulse through the trees. The air smelled of pine and wet stone. Our fire hissed when the wind shifted, the sound too loud against the valley's quiet. Jonathan moved around the camp with practiced efficiency, the same rhythm he used in city hotels or desert basins, unpacking cables, coiling cords, checking microphones, even though we weren't recording tonight. Routine steadied him. It steadied me, too. Leon sat apart, staring at the stream. His face looked older in the firelight, carved deeper by whatever he wasn't saying. He kept his rifle across his knees, a thumb brushing the safety switch like a habit. Every so often, his eyes flicked toward the faint glow beyond the trees, then back to the water. I set up the camera on a folding table, tethered it to the laptop, and scrolled through the file list. The thumbnails looked fine. Clean frames of the valley, the dirt road, the edge of the village. Nothing strange, nothing that hinted at the unease crawling under my skin since that afternoon. I told myself this was just my mind building ghosts out of exhaustion. Every documentary had a moment like this. The story tugging too hard, the air too still, the line between observer and participant blurring until you start imagining you're inside the myth you came to film. But my fingers hesitated over the trackpad. The first clip opened normally. Trees, branches swaying, Leon's truck parked in frame, Jonathan checking audio levels. I felt tension leave my shoulders. Nothing wrong. Nothing unexplainable. Then I skipped ahead to the footage of the village. The woman at the spinning wheel appeared exactly as I remembered, her hands moving around invisible thread, body swaying to the rhythm of labor without purpose. But when I scrubbed frame by frame, the image seemed to flicker, not glitching, but breathing. For one frame in 100, her hands blurred into something like smoke. For one frame, her mouth opened wider than it should, eyes blank, head tilted toward the camera as if she knew I was studying her. Then the next frame returned to normal. Woman, wheel, empty air. I leaned closer to the screen. My pulse thudded in my throat. The audio track hummed faintly, too faint for words, but too deliberate to be whined. I boosted the gain and listened, a low, rhythmic tone, somewhere between humming and machinery. Jonathan looked up from the fire. "What is it?" "Listen," I said. He joined me, head bent near the speaker. The hum continued, steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, faintly under it, a second sound emerged, a soft creak at regular intervals, the same rhythm we'd heard from the girl's swing. Jonathan frowned. "You recorded her?" "Not yet," I said. This was before we reached her. He stared at the waveform. Then, that shouldn't be there. We replayed it twice, 3 times. Each time, the swing's creak grew clearer, like the audio itself was learning to speak. Jonathan straightened, unsettled. Maybe it's crossfeed, ambient sound bouncing around the valley. But we both knew better. The valley didn't echo like that. It swallowed sound. I switched to the next clip. The man chopping wood that wasn't there. His movements were identical each time, as if the footage looped, but the time code confirmed it was continuous. On the 12th swing, just as the axe should have struck air, the blade caught light in a way metal shouldn't. For a single frame, the entire screen went white. When it cleared, the man's face was closer. He was staring straight into the camera, mouth open in a grin I hadn't seen in person. His teeth were small, perfect, like carved bone. His eyes glowed faintly, Not reflection, not lens flare, just light coming from behind them. Jonathan swore softly. What the hell is that? I paused the video, reversed, frame stepped back and forth. The face remained for exactly one frame, then gone. Could be shutter lag, I said, but my voice didn't sound convincing. Leon rose from the log where he'd been sitting. You boys mind keeping that noise down? His tone was calm, but there was strain under it. Sound travels weird in these mountains. We're just checking playback, I said. Don't, he said flatly. Some things out here don't like being looked at twice. He turned back toward the dark tree line, the rifle still across his lap. The firelight caught the scar on his arm again. It gleamed like something wet. Jonathan and I exchanged a glance. He mouthed, "He's spooked." I nodded, though I didn't believe Leon's fear came from superstition. It felt more like memory. When Leon finally moved toward his tent, I turned back to the laptop. There was one more clip left. The girl on the swing. Even before I hit play, my stomach tightened. The screen lit up with the image I remembered. The girl sitting still, swing moving perfectly, back and forth, back and forth. Her dress caught the light in tiny blue ripples. For 30 seconds, nothing changed. Then, as the swing passed through its apex, the colors deepened, the blue turning to ink, the wood behind her darkening until the whole frame seemed underwater. Jonathan leaned closer. Is that? The image shuddered. Cracks spidered from the corners of her eyes, black fissures spreading down her cheeks. They branched like lightning, jagged and purposeful. She smiled as they reached her mouth. The frame trembled, her teeth blurred into white streaks, her eyes into black voids, and then static. The video froze. My laptop fan whined. Every line of code behind that image felt alive, straining. Jasper, Jonathan said quietly, turn it off. But I couldn't. My hand hovered over the trackpad. For a split second, amid the static, something moved in the background, behind her, a shape taller than the doorframe, humanoid only in outline. It leaned toward the lens as if to see who was watching. The screen went black. For several seconds, the only sound was the stream outside and the thin, failing crackle of the fire. Jonathan exhaled. Please tell me that was just compression. I couldn't answer. My hands were shaking again, the same tremor I'd felt in the valley when I'd first seen her through the viewfinder. When I finally looked up, Leon was standing at the edge of the trees, staring toward the village lights. His shoulders were rigid. We shouldn't stay, he said without turning. Not here. Not near them. Leon, I've brought people up here before, he said. Hunters, surveyors, thrill seekers. They all come down with stories that don't match. Some remember villages, some don't, but they all dream the same sounds afterward. What sounds? Jonathan asked. He hesitated, creaking, like rope on wood. The fire snapped, sending sparks into the dark. I watched them rise and vanish, thinking of the girl's swing cutting its endless arc through air that didn't move. We packed in silence. No one suggested sleeping. By the time the first hint of dawn grayed the sky, the valley had vanished under a curtain of mist. The path ahead looked the same as it had when we arrived, but the air felt heavier, as if the mountain itself was waiting for us to choose wrong. I slung the camera over my shoulder. It felt heavier than yesterday, like something inside it had woken up. Let's go, I said. Leon didn't argue. He started the truck. As we bumped down the rutted road, I looked once over my shoulder. Through the mist, the valley was only a blur. But for one heartbeat, I could swear I saw a pale figure standing where the swing had been, perfectly still, arms folded, watching us leave. I blinked, and she was gone. The descent took longer than the climb. Morning light bled through the fog, flattening the forest into gray silhouettes that drifted past the windows like slow ghosts. Leon gripped the wheel too tightly, jaw clenched. Jonathan sat beside him in silence, headphones resting around his neck. Recorder switched off. The air inside the truck felt stale, saturated with the things we weren't saying. No one mentioned the footage. No one asked if the girl's face had really cracked, or if the figure behind her had leaned toward us. We pretended to focus on the road, but every bump made the camera in my lap shift slightly, the strap brushing my arm like a heartbeat. After an hour, the fog began to thin. I told myself that once we reached the main road, everything would recalibrate. Sunlight, cell signal, distance. Reality would reassert itself the way it always does when you leave a strange place. But the silence of the engine bay felt wrong. Too quiet for the climb, too smooth for the terrain. Leon's foot eased off the gas. "Hold on," he said. A man stood in the middle of the road. He hadn't been there a moment ago. The fog had been clear ahead, the path empty. Now he was just there, perfectly centered, hands clasped behind his back, like a statue someone had placed between us and the exit. His suit was immaculate, dark gray with fine pinstripes like collar sharp enough to cut light. His shoes gleamed. No dust, no road grime. Leon stopped the truck so abruptly that I lurched forward, catching the dashboard with my palm. Jonathan cursed under his breath. The man smiled faintly, as though our arrival had been expected. "Gentlemen," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, the kind that came from rooms with bookshelves and carpet. "You appear to be lost." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His words carried perfectly through the air. I swallowed and leaned forward. "I'm Jasper Miles, documentary filmmaker. We're documenting communities that live off-grid. If we're trespassing," he raised one hand in a graceful, dismissive motion, "you are not trespassing. You are wandering." His pale blue eyes shifted between us, settling on me with mild amusement. "And you've wandered somewhere you were never meant to find." Jonathan's fingers found the record button on his audio deck. Instinct. Document everything. The man noticed. His smile tightened. "I wouldn't recommend recording this, Mr. Grant." Jonathan froze. He hadn't given his name. I felt a slow chill crawl down my spine. "You know us?" "Names are surface details," the man said. "Yours carry easily. Sound does not die here. It just forgets what it was saying." Leon muttered something under his breath. Prayer or curse? I couldn't tell. The suited man continued, calm as weather. "You've seen things through your device that others could not. The lens sees too much when brought here. It pulls at seams, opens them. Sometimes what lives underneath looks back." He stepped closer. The air seemed to fold around him. I couldn't tell if the fog thickened or if he carried it with him. I wanted to raise the camera to see if the lens would reveal what he really was. But the memory of the girl's face, those cracks, that impossible smile, stopped me. The viewfinder had already shown me more than I could stand. "What are they?" I asked. "Those people in the village? The girl, the woman spinning nothing. What are they doing?" The man tilted his head, pleased that I'd asked. "They are continuing," he said, "rehearsing the shape of what was once real. This place was meant to become a reflection, a study of your world's persistence. But something failed. The echo kept its motion, not its matter." I frowned. "You're saying the village is a copy?" He smiled again. "A draft." The word hung there, simple and horrifying. Jonathan whispered, "Jesus." The man's eyes flicked toward him. "Your companion believes he hears truth, but truth here is not sound, it's sight. And Mr. Miles," he turned back to me, "you've looked too deeply." My mouth went dry. "Through the camera?" "Yes." His tone softened, almost sympathetic. "You opened the shutter between layers. Most look and see only faces. You looked and saw what those faces are built from. Now they know you." Jonathan tensed beside me. "Who knows him? The uncompleted," the man said. "The ones who keep their forms moving so the world won't collapse entirely. They hunger for attention, recognition. Each glance feeds them. Your camera is a feast." Leon's voice cracked. "We're leaving." The man's smile widened slightly. "You can leave the valley, but not what you've seen." I felt something like pressure build behind my eyes, the way it feels before a storm when the air itself gets heavy. "If we go," I said carefully, "will they follow?" "They already have," he said. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the road. "You should go before the light fails. Visibility is so unreliable between layers." We didn't wait for a second invitation. Leon slammed the truck into gear, gravel spraying under the tires as we lurched forward. I twisted in my seat, half expecting to see him shrinking into the fog, but he didn't shrink. He stayed exactly the same size, receding without moving, like a photograph sliding away instead of a man standing still. The forest swallowed him. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then Jonathan said quietly, "What the hell did he mean between layers?" I couldn't answer. All I could think of was the way the villagers' motions had continued after we left, spinning, sweeping, swinging, like they were running on a loop that didn't know we'd stopped watching. Leon drove faster than he had on the way in. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror so often I started doing the same. There was nothing behind us but fog and trees. Still, every curve of the road felt narrower, every tree closer, as if the forest itself was leaning in to listen. After a while, Leon said, "If you tell anyone what you saw up there, they'll call you crazy." "I know," I said. "I mean it. Folks tried before, years back. Hunters, scientists, a preacher once. None of them made sense afterward." He paused. "Some of them didn't come back at all." Jonathan exhaled. "What happened to them?" Leon's grip tightened on the wheel. "Depends who you ask. Some say they walked into the trees and never stopped. Some say they came back thinking they'd been gone an hour when it'd been months. Maybe they just found another lair to live in." The tires hit a rut, jolting us all. My shoulder slammed the door, pain snapping me back to the moment. The camera slid from my lap onto the floorboard with a heavy thud. I picked it up automatically. The body was warm, too warm. I powered it off, but the battery light stayed on, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat through the casing. Jonathan noticed. "It's not supposed to do that, right?" "No," I said. Leon muttered something again, voice trembling. We reached the asphalt road by mid-afternoon. Civilization resumed in cautious increments. First a road sign half swallowed by moss, then a weathered mailbox, then a power line humming softly overhead. The sound felt almost holy. I turned once, looking back and toward the ridge. The fog was already closing like a door. No trace of the village, no trace of the man in the suit, just trees and sky. I wanted to believe that meant it was over, but as sunlight broke through the canopy, I saw it glinting faintly off the camera's lens. A reflection that didn't belong to any of us, a brief, pale shimmer like an eye opening from inside the glass. I turned it away from me. Behind us, through the open window, came a faint sound carried on the wind. Creak, creak, creak. The rhythm of a swing. By the time we reached town, sunlight had dulled into a color that looked more like fatigue than day. Leon dropped us at a roadside motel and left without cutting the engine. His window stayed half rolled down, his eyes fixed on the horizon like he was waiting for something to follow us out of the trees. When I thanked him, he only said, "You'll see the ridge different now," and drove away. Inside the motel room, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and old rain. I dumped my gear on the narrow desk, plugged in the camera, and tried to shake the mountain air from my lungs. Jonathan dropped onto the second bed, rubbed his face, and said nothing. "Let's get it over with," I said. He nodded, still pale. "If the footage is clean, we send the pitch. If it's not, we forget it ever happened." I connected the cable. The computer chimed, one note too loud in the small room. A list of files filled the screen, dozens of clips, each with proper timestamps and data sizes. My pulse steadied. Maybe, finally, something normal. I clicked the first thumbnail. Black. The time code moved, counting frames. The file size read 2 gigabytes. But the screen was pure digital night. "Try another," Jonathan said. I did. Another and another. Same thing. A screen so dark it looked like absence pretending to be shadow. "That's impossible," I muttered. If the camera lens was capped, there'd still be ambient noise, some static grain. This is zero. Jonathan leaned forward, scrolled through the metadata. They're intact, just empty. The room hummed with a computer fan, the air conditioner clicking on and off. It felt like the whole world was listening for our reaction. I tried to laugh. Corrupt card. Happens all the time. Jonathan's expression didn't shift. Then explain why the file sizes are right, or why I don't remember hitting record. I froze. "What?" He blinked, confused by his own words. "I mean, did we? You said you filmed. I remember checking audio, but when?" "You were next to me," I said. "The girl on the swing." "What girl?" He said it softly, like someone testing a story he didn't believe. I stared at him. "Jonathan, she was right there, blue dress, singing. You told me to stop filming." He shook his head slowly. "Jasper, You've been wired all day. We hiked. We looked at some old homesteads. There was no village, no people. My throat closed. Leon saw them. Jonathan frowned. Leon drove us up, waited at the ridge, that's all. He said there's nothing down that way. I stood too fast, the chair clattering behind me. No, I remember it. The smell of smoke, the children, the woman spinning air. My voice broke. Jonathan looked scared now, not of the story, but of me. Hey, maybe you got altitude sickness. You've been pushing hard, sleeping maybe 3 hours a night. We'll take a break, get you checked out. The laptop's fan whirred louder. On the screen, the list of black thumbnails glowed like an accusation. Each file had a title generated by the camera, DSC-001 through DSC-036. Real files, unreal images. I clicked one more out of desperation. This time, the blackness wasn't total. For a heartbeat, something flickered. A line of gray light, moving side to side, rhythmic, like rope under tension, then gone. Jonathan hadn't seen it. He was in the bathroom running the tap. I stared at the frozen frame. In the center of the darkness, if you looked long enough, you could almost imagine a face. Pale, unfocused, smiling. When he came out, I closed the window. You're right, I said quietly. Maybe I pushed too hard. He nodded, relieved. Get some sleep. We'll head out in the morning. He turned the lights off and was asleep within minutes. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling's swirl pattern, tracing it until it turned into motion. The camera sat on the desk, its battery light pulsing faintly like it had back in the truck. At midnight, I got up. I couldn't not look. I powered it on, opened the playback screen. Every file still there. Every image still black. But as I scrolled, the hum of the air conditioner shifted pitch. Lower, slower, almost like a breath syncing with the clicks of the wheel. Halfway through the list, the camera froze, then the screen flared white. For an instant, I saw the valley. Sharp, clear daylight, buildings exactly as I remembered. The woman at her wheel, the man raising his axe, the girl on the swing, but they weren't moving. They were posed, eyes fixed on the camera as if caught mid-blink. Then the frame jittered, and the girl's smile began to widen, stretching in jerks until it became something far too large for her face. The other villagers followed, smiles blooming like cracks through porcelain, all of them facing the lens. A thin whisper leaked from the speakers. My own voice distorted. Don't look. I dropped the camera. The screen went black again, the sound gone. Jonathan didn't wake. The room was still except for the faint rhythmic pulse from inside the camera body, matching my heartbeat. I left it on the desk and sat by the window until dawn, watching the parking lot fill with the first commuters. Every time a car door slammed, I flinched, waiting for a sound that never came. When morning arrived, the files were still there, still blank, still heavy, but the timestamps had changed. Every one of them now read the same minute, 11:47 p.m., the moment I'd looked again. Jonathan didn't notice when I slid the camera back into its case. He was packing gear for the drive home, humming to himself, the way he always did before a long stretch of highway. I envied his certainty, the way reality stitched itself neatly around him again. Outside, the sun climbed high and bright. My shadow looked solid on the asphalt, but when I glanced at the camera case, its shadow seemed a shade darker, just enough that for one trembling second, I thought I saw it move. The drive home stretched across 3 states and most of my disbelief. Jonathan talked about gear upgrades, color profiles, the kind of safe chatter that fills air so you don't have to think. I let him. My mind was still somewhere in that valley, between the rhythm of a swing and the sound of an empty world pretending to work. By the time we hit the interstate, I'd stopped trying to explain it to myself. The footage was gone. The others remembered nothing, and I was the only one carrying something that shouldn't exist. Memories too sharp to be dreams, too impossible to be real. At home, I unpacked everything but the camera that I placed in the closet behind a row of coats, like a weapon I didn't trust myself to touch. I told myself I'd take a few weeks off, maybe start a new project somewhere far from mountains and fog, but the silence in my apartment felt wrong. The kind of wrong that listens. I turned on the television just to have another voice in the room. News anchors spoke about weather systems and politics, their faces perfectly human, until, for one impossible second, the feed glitched. Every face on screen froze mid-sentence, mouths half open, eyes empty, moving with mechanical precision. The same stillness as the villagers. Then it cleared, normal again. I turned the TV off. That night, I dreamed of the valley. I was walking through it with my camera, only this time it wasn't hanging from my neck. It was part of me. The lens replaced my right eye, the aperture contracting and widening with every heartbeat. I could hear the swing before I saw it, the rope creaking like the tick of a metronome buried in bone. The girl was waiting. She smiled when I approached. "You looked too deep," she said, though her lips didn't move. The voice came from behind me, from inside me. "Now you see both sides." When I woke, my right eye ached. I went to the bathroom mirror. The pupil looked normal, but every time I blinked, a ghost image lingered, a perfect circle of light, the color of camera glass catching sun. I told myself it was fatigue. For weeks, I avoided touching the camera, though sometimes at night I'd hear faint clicks from the closet, as if something inside was adjusting its focus. Once I opened the door and found the memory light glowing, though the battery had been removed days earlier. The dreams kept coming, the same valley, the same villagers repeating their motions. The girl's swing moving faster with each dream, her smile wider, more expectant. In the last dream, I saw her step off the swing. The rope still moved, empty, but she walked toward me. "You opened the shutter," she whispered. "We're still developing." I woke with my heart hammering and the taste of smoke in my mouth. That morning, I powered up my laptop for the first time in weeks. The desktop background flickered once, replaced by a single image before returning to normal, a frame of pure black with one thin white line down the center, like light leaking through a door. I checked the file directory. Empty. No external drives connected. I didn't tell anyone. Jonathan had stopped calling after the third polite voicemail. He thought I was taking time off. Maybe he was right, but I began noticing small inconsistencies around me. Coffee cups left in different positions than I remembered. The clock in the kitchen ticking out of sync with my watch. Reflections in windows that hesitated a second too long before mimicking my movement. And once, on the walk back from the grocery store, I heard it again. The creak of a swing. Faint, rhythmic, impossible in the middle of the city. I turned, but the playground behind the fence was empty. Only the swing moved, gliding in perfect arcs through still air. That night, I opened the closet. The camera sat where I'd left it, but dust hadn't touched it. The lens gleamed faintly in the dark. I reached for it, hesitated. The suited man's voice surfaced in my memory. Sight comes with consequences. But curiosity is stronger than warning. It always has been. It's what built my career, what ruined it, and maybe what tied me to that valley forever. I powered it on. The light blinked once, steady. The screen came alive, showing static, then a shape forming out of darkness. A valley under fog. The woman at her spinning wheel, the man with his axe, the children playing with air, all frozen mid-motion, staring at the camera. And in the foreground, the girl stood on her porch, smiling, the ropes of the swing still moving behind her. For a long time, she didn't move. Then, very slowly, she lifted her hand and waved. The frame brightened, as if the sun had come out. The image shook once, and the camera shut off on its own. The room felt smaller afterward, the air thicker. I placed the camera back in the closet and closed the door. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, but sometimes, when I pass the door at night, I hear it faintly. Creak, 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 and the smallest voice, patient, almost comforting, whispering, "Keep watching. We're almost real."